spring storms make normal decisions feel stupid in hindsight. The road looks manageable until it doesn't, and then all at once your windshield turns white, your phone drops to 1 bar, and you start trusting the nearest porch light more than your own judgment. That's how this happened. I only went into that house because the storm got so bad I couldn't see the road, and maybe 10 minutes later, I was standing in a stranger's kitchen staring at a locked basement door. This was last March, outside Bloomington. Actually, wait, not early March, late March, because it was one of those warm days that turns violent by dark, where everything smells like wet dirt and electricity. I was driving home from a late shift, tired in that numb way where your eyes stay open but your brain is already halfway home without you. My car was old, like old enough that I already knew the wipers had 2 settings, useless and loud. My gas light had come on maybe 15 minutes earlier. My phone was at 8%. I remember that exactly because I kept looking at it like staring would make it charge. GPS had kicked me off the main road to avoid traffic, and I let it, which I still hate admitting because back roads always feel safe right up until there's nobody around. The rain started as nothing, just that soft tapping on the glass. Then it got hard fast, the kind that erases the lines on the road and makes every mailbox look like a person standing still. I could barely see past the hood. The wipers weren't keeping up. They were just smearing water around. I slowed down so much I was basically coasting, and that's when I saw the house. It wasn't creepy. That's the part that sits wrong with me. It was just a rural house with a porch light on, a couple of vehicles off to the side, one of those American flags clipped to the porch railing and whipping around in the wind. It looked lived in, safe even. I pulled into the gravel drive because I honestly thought I was just going to sit there for 5 minutes until the rain eased up. But the second I killed the engine, I realized how loud the storm actually was without the car around me. It was hammering the roof, branches moving, thunder close enough to feel in my chest. And I had this immediate stupid thought that if lightning hit nearby, sitting in the dark in a dead car in some stranger's driveway was going to look worse than just knocking. I didn't even really knock. I just stepped onto the porch and lifted my hand, and the door opened before my knuckles hit the wood. That was the first thing. Not bad enough, just enough. He was maybe in his 50s, somewhere in there. Flannel shirt, jeans, clean-shaven, regular face. I don't remember his features right. I remember his voice more than his face. Flat, calm, local. He looked at me once, then passed me at the rain and said, "Storm's not letting up anytime soon. You can wait inside if you want." There's a specific kind of relief that makes you ignore your own instincts. Your shoulders drop before your brain catches up. Mine did. I thanked him, probably too much, and stepped in. The inside was normal too. That's what kept trapping me. There were wet shoes by the front mat. A TV somewhere in the next room had local weather coverage on low volume, just that steady weather anchor murmur with radar colors flashing blue and red across the walls every few seconds. The kitchen smelled like cheap coffee that had been sitting on a burner too long. On the counter, there was one of those old NOAA weather radios, the blocky kind with the little speaker grill, and every time it crackled, I felt my skin pull tight. That tornado warning voice used to freak me out as a kid, and hearing it in that kitchen did something ugly to my stomach. He handed me a towel like this was normal, like people washed up on his porch every time it rained, told me to sit down, pointed at a chair by the table, asked if I wanted coffee. He said I was safer inside than out on the road, and the worst part is he was probably right. At least at that point, he was right. So I sat there with this towel in my hands, leaving rain marks on his kitchen floor, trying to act less embarrassed than I felt. I kept checking my phone. No signal, then 1 bar, then nothing again. He noticed every time I looked. He noticed everything. Not in a dramatic way, just too closely. His eyes would land on me and stay there a second too long, then shift away like he remembered he was supposed to look casual. I told myself that was normal too. Some stranger walks into your house at night during a storm, of course you watch them. That was the logic trap. Every weird thing had a reasonable explanation if I worked hard enough to make one. Then I noticed he kept glancing toward the hallway. Not repeatedly.
Not enough to make a scene in my own head, just enough that once I saw it, I couldn't stop seeing it. We'd both go quiet for a second because of thunder, and his eyes would cut down that hall, then back to me, then to the weather radio, then the hall again. I followed his line of sight without making it obvious. There was a white door at the end of the hallway. Plain door, basement door, I figured, because of the angle and the way the trim stopped. What got me was the lock. It had a slide lock on the outside. Not a latch up high for a child, not something broken and temporary, an actual slide bolt on the hallway side of the basement door. I stared at it too long enough for him to notice. He smiled small, like he'd been expecting me to ask, and said, "Don't mind that door. It swells when it rains." That line hit me wrong immediately. Not because it was impossible. Old houses do weird things. Doors stick, wood swells. Everybody knows that. But people explain normal things differently when they're telling the truth. They don't get ahead of your thoughts like that unless they've been rehearsing the explanation in their own head already. I made myself nod. I remember nodding because my neck felt stiff, like somebody else was moving it for me. I said something useless, probably "got it" or "makes sense," and my mouth was so dry the words stuck together. Then I heard it. It wasn't loud. That's another reason it still bothers me. If it had been screaming or pounding, maybe my brain would have snapped into one clean fear and I would have moved faster. But it was small. One thump. Then a little rattle, like a doorknob shifting once and stopping. That was it. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like missing a stair. I didn't look at the door first. I looked at him. He paused. Half a second, maybe less, just enough. His face didn't change, but his body did. His shoulders tightened and released. Then he started talking over the sound immediately, like something about power outages on these roads, like he'd been waiting to cover it up before the noise even finished happening. That pause was the moment everything changed. Because before that, I was still making excuses for him. After that, my body decided before my brain did. My hands went cold. Not shaky at first, just cold. Like all the blood in me had pooled inward. My hearing narrowed. The TV got quieter. The rain got farther away. I could feel my pulse in my throat. Big, slow hits that didn't match how fast it was actually going. Tunnel vision. The hallway got sharp and everything else blurred. I looked back toward the door, and once I did, I started seeing things I hadn't let myself see. There were scratch marks near the frame. Low down, not huge gouges, more like repeated little drags in the paint, clustered near the lock. Next to the wall, there was a case of bottled water and a big pack of paper towels, stacked neatly like somebody meant to carry them down and hadn't yet. Or had. Or kept doing it. I don't know. The normal house started rearranging itself in my head into something else. Not abandoned, not haunted. Worse. Functional. And the thought that hit me was so simple it made me feel sick. That door probably wasn't locked to keep people out. I didn't confront him. People always imagined they'd say something smart in that moment. They wouldn't. Your body gets primitive fast. I just needed an excuse that sounded boring enough to be true. I stood up too quickly and had to touch the back of the chair because my knees went weak for a second. I said I needed to get my charger from the car. No, that wasn't it. I said medication. Actually, I think I mixed both together. Something stupid like, I left my charger and my meds in the glove box. It didn't even sound right, and I knew it didn't sound right, but I was already moving when I said it. He stood up too. That made my teeth feel loose. That's the only way I can describe it. My whole jaw tensed so hard it felt like my teeth didn't fit. He didn't block me. He just stepped slightly toward the hallway first, almost without thinking, like a reflex, then corrected and moved back. That tiny movement was worse than if he'd gone full psycho on me. It meant he had two things he was tracking, me and that door. I walked, fast but not running, back through the front room. The weather coverage was still murmuring. The radar on the TV was bright pink now. The weather radio hissed and clicked on the counter behind us. My shoes were still wet and squeaking on the floor, and I was weirdly aware of how obvious every sound I made was. He was right behind me, but not close enough to touch me. Just present, calm, breathing through his nose like nothing in the world was wrong. When I opened the front door, the wind shoved it out of my hand. Rain hit me sideways, ice cold, and for one insane second I almost stayed because outside was that violent. That's how people get trapped. Not because they don't know, because the other option looks bad too. I ran to my car. Not a horror movie run, not screaming, just that ugly half run where your body is trying to stay controlled and failing. My keys slipped in my hand and hit the gravel. I had to crouch and grab them with fingers that barely worked. I could feel him on the porch behind me. I didn't look right away. I got the door open, got inside, locked it, and then I looked. He was standing under the porch light watching me. No expression, no wave, no anger, just watching. That almost broke me worse than if he chased me. If someone chases you, your fear has somewhere to go. When they just watch, it stays inside you and starts breeding. I backed out too fast, fishtailed a little in the gravel, and then I was on the road again, in rain so heavy it still felt dangerous, and I drove anyway. I drove with both hands locked on the wheel so hard my forearms cramped. I kept looking in the mirror, expecting headlights. None came. Just darkness and rain and the occasional lightning flash turning the fields white for a second. I didn't feel any safer once I left the driveway. Not really. I didn't feel safe until I hit a gas station maybe 15-20 minutes later. Actually, maybe closer to 10. Time stops behaving when your adrenaline spikes. It was one of those little stations with 2 pumps and a subway attached, and the fluorescent lights inside looked unreal. I parked crooked, sat there, tried to unlock my phone 3 times because my thumb kept slipping on the screen. I called a friend first because I needed another human voice telling me I wasn't crazy. Then I made a non-emergency report, and that part went exactly how you think it went. What did I have? A rural house somewhere off a back road in a storm. A man who let me inside and offered me coffee. A basement door with an outside lock. One sound, maybe scratch marks, maybe supplies by the stairs. A weird feeling. That was it. No plate number, no exact address, no proof of anything, except that every part of me had been screaming to leave. I gave them what I could. I sat in that gas station parking lot shaking so hard my knee kept hitting the underside of the steering wheel. I kept seeing that half-second pause on his face after the sound came from downstairs. Not the sound itself, the pause. Because that was the only honest thing he gave me the whole time. I never found out what was behind that door. Nobody ever called me back with some huge explanation. No missing person headline popped up that I could tie to that house. No dramatic ending came and made it all clean. It just stayed there in my head, exactly as it happened. The porch light, the coffee smell, the weather radio crackling, the lock on the outside. Him saying, "Don't mind that door, it swells when it rains." There are some places you leave physically before your body understands you got out. Mine took hours, maybe days. Even now, if rain gets hard enough that the road disappears, my chest tightens before I can stop it. Because once you realize how easy it is to walk into the wrong house while trying to stay safe, every porch light looks a little different after that. After the first spring storm of the year, your house keeps making weather noises long after the sky is done with you. That's what makes the wrong sound so easy to forgive. The first big spring storm had already passed when I called 911, but the operator kept asking me about thunder she could still hear on my phone. This happened last March at the rental house I was living in outside Dayton, and I still check that back door every time it rains. The part that still sits in my stomach is how close I came to hanging up. If I had, I would have gone straight to the kitchen door to check the noise myself. I know I would have. And that isn't me being dramatic. After a storm, everything has an alibi. Gates slam, branches fall late, siding pops, power glitches. The whole outside of your house keeps twitching for a while, like it hasn't realized the worst part is over. It was early March, maybe the second week. Actually, wait, it was a Wednesday because my roommate was working late and she always had Wednesday shifts. I was alone in this little one-story rental, eating takeout out of the carton, half watching YouTube through a Roku, phone plugged into an Anchor charger because the power had been flickering on and off for an hour. I don't remember what video was playing. I remember the smell of soy sauce in the living room and that cheap blue glow from the TV every time the lights dipped. It was around 9:40, maybe 9:47, somewhere in there. Rain had mostly died down, but the gutters were still ticking and dripping, and every once in a while the wind would lean on one side of the house hard enough to make it creak. At one point, my phone buzzed with a delayed backyard motion alert from my Wise camera. It came through late enough that it felt useless. The signal had already been weird all night, so I just swiped it away. A few minutes later, I noticed something looked off in the back. I could see part of the side yard from the living room window when the neighbor's light kicked on. The gate was open, or the trash can was out of place first. I still switched those around in my head. One of them registered before the other. Either way, something back there looked shifted, but the whole yard looked wrong after the storm, so I told myself it was storm damage. That felt cleaner, easier.
I wasn't leaving anyway. My silver Honda Civic was pinned in by a fallen limb in the driveway. Not huge, but big enough that I wasn't moving it by myself, and the street out front had water building up over the curb. Driving a Civic through flooded March water feels like begging for a dead engine and a worse night. So I stayed inside. I turned the TV down. I told myself I'd deal with the yard in the morning. Then there was one heavy bang from the back of the house. Not a crash, not glass, just one deep, hollow boom. I stood there listening and nothing happened after it, which made it easier to excuse. That's how your brain betrays you. It loves a gap. If the bad thing doesn't repeat immediately, your body starts negotiating on its behalf. I sat back down. I looked at my phone. Then maybe a minute later, there was another boom. Closer this time, like it came from the back steps or the concrete slab outside the kitchen door. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like missing a stair in the dark. I muted the TV completely. The refrigerator hummed. Water dripped into the sink. My hands were already cold. I called 911 because doing nothing had started to feel louder than the noise. Even then, while it was ringing, I almost ended the call. I was looking at my reflection in the black TV screen, thinking I was about to waste somebody's time over weather junk. The operator answered, calm like she'd been awake for 3 days and nothing in the world surprised her anymore. And I started explaining that I was alone. The storm had just passed. Something had been hitting the back of my house. My car was blocked in and the street was flooding anyway. She asked for my address. I gave it to her. I was talking too fast. I could hear my own voice doing that tight, breathy thing it does when my mouth goes dry. And she kept coming back to the thunder. She said she could still hear it in the background on my phone, low, distant booms. I told her the storm had moved on. I was sure of that. You can feel when a storm leaves. The pressure changes. The air goes hollow. It's different. She didn't argue with me. She just went quiet for a second, listening harder than I was, and then she said, very calm, "Ma'am, stop talking for a second." So I did. There was a boom from the side yard. Silence. Then another from farther back. Silence. Then one on the steps. Short. Hollow. Close.
Not thunder. Too even, too clean, too deliberate, like someone was checking how the house sounded from the outside. My chest went tight so fast it hurt. I started whispering without meaning to. My fingers were slick on the phone. I couldn't make myself turn toward the kitchen, but I was staring down that hallway anyway, like my body thought seeing less would somehow help. Then, right outside the kitchen, in a completely normal man's voice, I heard, "Hey, your gate blew open." That line still makes the hair lift on my arms, because storms don't talk, and people who mean well don't stand in the dark at your back door after the power's been blinking all night. My knees went weak, every little muscle in my legs locked up at once. I couldn't breathe right. The operator came back on immediately and told me to move now, lock myself in a room, do not check the door, do not go to the window, do not answer him. I grabbed my phone, my keys out of reflex even though the car was useless, and my work backpack because it was on the floor by the couch. That's just what my hands found. Then I went straight to the bathroom at the end of the hall and locked it. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. That sounds fake until it happens. It was so loud I thought it would drown everything else out, but I still heard one small metal rattle from the kitchen, then a scrape, then nothing. The operator kept talking in that same steady voice, telling me officers were close, asking if the bathroom door was locked, telling me to stay low and stay quiet. I had both hands over my mouth because I could hear myself breathing too hard. My feet were freezing on the tile. I kept staring at the crack under the door, waiting for a shadow to cut across it. The police got there fast. It couldn't have been more than 6 minutes. It felt like an hour. I heard knocking first, then shouting, then the operator saying officers were announcing themselves and it was okay to answer. They cleared the house, cleared the yard. He was gone. That was it. No chase, no spotlight in the trees, no dramatic ending, just gone. Outside the back door, they found muddy shoe prints in the wet dirt leading up close to the kitchen. The side gate was unlatched. One of the trash cans had been dragged over under the kitchen window, and the screen there was bent just enough that you wouldn't notice it unless somebody showed you. There was mud smeared on the glass of the back door, too. Not a full handprint, more like the side of a palm, like somebody had leaned in to look. One of the officers asked if I had somewhere else to go for the night, and my whole body answered before I did. I shoved a hoodie, a charger, and some clothes into the backpack and left with them to stay somewhere else. I don't remember locking the front door when I walked out. I remember the porch light hitting that branch across the front of my Civic, and I remember the water at the curb reflecting the red and blue lights so hard it looked deeper than it was. The next day, a neighbor posted in the Facebook group that somebody had been checking doors during the outage, mostly on the houses backing up to that little drainage strip. Same kind of thing. Gates open, back steps, mud. Nobody had a name, nobody had a plate, nobody got identified. That house never sounded normal again after that. Rain on the gutters, wind bumping the fence, one delayed motion alert in the middle of the night. None of it meant weather anymore. I still check that back door every time it rains. Back roads stop feeling like roads once the rain gets bad enough. They turn into these narrow black strips where your headlights only show you how alone you are. We got stranded on one during a spring storm, and about 10 minutes after our car died, something started knocking from underneath it. This happened last March, and I still won't take that shortcut even in daylight. I'm serious about that. Heavy rain changes the way your brain works for a while after. You start checking mirrors too much. You start listening under the car before you even unlock it. If I hear anything weird when it's storming now, my stomach just drops on its own. The part that sits in my chest the worst is that we had a chance to turn around earlier, and I was the one who told my friend to trust the GPS. That's the kind of stupid decision that sounds harmless when you make it. It's just one sentence. Just trust the GPS. Then later it turns into the sentence you replay while your hands are shaking so hard your thumb won't hit the screen right. It was a normal night before that. That's what makes it cling to me. Nothing dramatic. We were heading home late after grabbing food, one of those cheap fast food runs where the fries go cold in the bag before you even leave the parking lot. There was a cup in the holder sweating onto old receipts. My friend had some playlist on low, and there was a wet hoodie thrown across the back seat because we'd already gotten caught in rain once earlier. My phone battery was at I think 12%, maybe 9. It was low enough that I had already turned the brightness down and stopped opening anything that wasn't maps. We were in his old Honda Accord, early 2000s, beige, the kind that somehow survives everything except the one thing you need it not to do. It was a good car, honestly, or it had been good enough. The wipers were fine in regular rain. Once the storm really came down, they just smeared the windshield and made everything look farther away than it was.
The main road home was backing up because of flooding, or maybe there was a downed branch too. Actually, wait, I think it was flooding first, and then people were slowing down because a tree was leaning over one lane. I just remember a line of brake lights glowing red through the rain, and both of us being tired and wanting to get home. The GPS offered a county road shortcut, and I said to take it. I said it like I knew what I was talking about, like a blue line on a screen means the road is safe. At first, it didn't even feel creepy, just annoying. The kind of rural road where mailboxes lean a little and every driveway looks too long. No streetlights, ditches filling up on both sides, trees bending in the wind. We were joking about how the GPS always tries to kill people in movies, and he said if we ended up in a cornfield, it was my fault. Stupid normal stuff. That's the worst part. You can be laughing right up until the moment your body realizes something else is there with you. The first thing that felt off was a pickup truck parked near a gate on the side of the road. Dark truck, no lights. It was sitting crooked, like one side had slipped toward the ditch, or maybe the driver had just pulled off too fast. I didn't get a good look at it, just the shape, black against black. On a road like that, a random truck doesn't automatically mean danger. People pull over. Farmers leave stuff everywhere. That was the logic. That was the lie our brains used because the alternative would have made the air inside the car change too soon. We passed it and kept going. Maybe 2 minutes later, maybe 5, the road got worse. Water was collecting in long, shallow sheets that looked flat until the tires hit them. The Accord started feeling light in the steering, then heavy, then weirdly soft on one side. He cursed and slowed down, but the shoulder wasn't really a shoulder anymore. It was just mud pretending to be road. The front dipped, the tires spun once, and the engine cut out. Just silence after the engine died. Then rain. So much rain it sounded like handfuls of gravel hitting the roof. He tried the ignition right away. Nothing. It turned, coughed, stopped. We both looked out through the windshield like there was going to be some obvious answer standing in front of us. There wasn't. Just the hood, water moving over the asphalt, and darkness swallowing everything past the beams. People always think getting out is the smart option until the weather is bad enough. Then the car becomes this little locked shell your body refuses to leave. There was almost no shoulder. Water was building up on both sides. Lightning was close enough that the inside of the car flashed white every few seconds. My phone said 1 bar, and then no service, and then nothing. Standing outside in the dark felt wrong in this deep animal way. Sitting in the car with the doors locked felt stupid, but safer. Safer wins every time when your throat starts going dry. So we stayed put. At first, the noise under the car sounded like storm junk, a branch, road debris, something loose getting pushed around by the water. It was a light knock under my feet, just once. Then another a few seconds later. We both heard it, but neither of us said anything right away. Denial is automatic. Your brain keeps trying to hand you normal explanations because normal explanations let you keep breathing. Then it happened again. 3 taps. Clean, deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. Then a pause. The sound moved.
It wasn't under my side anymore. It scraped or shifted, I don't know how to describe it, like weight sliding in mud under the frame. And then there was another knock from under the passenger side. Not random, not debris. It was traveling. He reached over and shut the music off. I turned the air down because the fan was suddenly too loud. The whole car went still, except for the rain and our breathing. My heartbeat was punching so hard in my neck it made it hard to hear for a second. I remember trying to swallow and my mouth just being completely dry. I had my phone in my hand and my fingers were so slick I almost dropped it between the seat and the door. Another scrape, closer to his door this time. He whispered my name and I didn't answer because something in me had locked up. That freezing feeling is real. People talk about fight or flight, but there's a third thing where your body just goes cold and heavy, like it's trying not to exist. Then there was a voice, low, too low, not outside the window, not standing beside us. It came from down near the bottom of the door, like the person was crouched or on the ground. Real calm. You got a jack in there?
I felt every muscle in my stomach pull tight at once. My legs actually started trembling. He and I both just stared forward. I could see him in my peripheral vision, hands stuck on the wheel, shoulders up around his ears, not moving. That voice didn't sound panicked. It didn't sound like somebody in trouble. That was the part that made the skin on my arms go hot and then cold. If someone's stranded in a storm and needs help, there's urgency in it. There's breath. There's a human shape at window height. This was different. This was somebody already underneath us, talking like it was normal. Nobody answered. The rain got louder for a second, or maybe my hearing just tunneled. Another flash of lightning hit, and I looked toward the passenger side, even though every part of me was telling me not to. I didn't see a face. I still don't remember a face. I remember muddy fingers hooked for half a second under the bottom edge of the passenger door, right where the metal curves in. Just fingertips, then gone when the light changed. He tried the ignition again. Nothing. A click, a weak turn, dead. Under the car, something shifted fast. Metal gave this dull little thud from beneath us, and then another knock came under my side again, like whoever it was had moved back across. My chest got so tight I couldn't take a full breath. I was trying to call somebody, anybody, but the phone wouldn't load anything. No service, just that ugly little message on a glowing screen, making the inside of the car look even darker. Then the voice again, still calm. Closer somehow. You got a jack in there? Not louder, just closer. That's what broke the freeze. I told him to start the car. I think I said it too many times. Start it, start it, start it. My voice didn't even sound like mine. He turned the key again and pumped the gas, even though that probably doesn't do anything in that car. The engine coughed, died, coughed again. Something brushed the underside right below my feet. I pulled my legs up without thinking. That's how gone my brain was, like keeping my shoes off the floor mat would matter if someone came through the window. Another lightning flash lit up the rear passenger side, and I caught this shape low to the ground near the wheel. Not clear, just a crouched outline where no person should have been. Head down, shoulders wet and dark, then black again. The engine finally turned over. It was ugly and loud and shaky, but it caught. He threw it in reverse so hard the car jerked and I smacked my shoulder into the door. Water sprayed up on both sides. The tires spun first, then grabbed, and the whole car lurched backward. There was this awful half second where I thought we were just going to sink deeper. And then we were moving. Fast. He backed up farther than he needed to, then whipped it around in the narrowest stretch of road imaginable. I did not look out the side window.
I kept my eyes forward and my phone clenched in my hand so hard the edges left marks in my palm. I heard something hit the side of the car once when we pulled away. Not hard, more like a hand slapping metal. Maybe a branch. My brain still tries to make it a branch when I think about it too long. We didn't stop. We didn't say much either. He drove with both hands welded to the wheel, leaning toward the windshield like that would help him see through the rain. I kept checking the mirrors, even though I knew there was no way a person was following us on foot in that weather. It didn't matter. My body was still acting like if I looked away for 1 second, something would be there. The first gas station we found was one of those bright little islands off the highway, all white light and wet concrete and bugs sticking to the windows. It looked unreal after that road. We pulled in too fast, parked crooked by the air pump, and just sat there with the engine running because neither of us was ready to open the doors. Inside, the cashier took one look at us and asked if we'd been in an accident. That's how bad we looked. My hands were shaking so hard I had to put the phone on the counter to dial. We called the police from there. An officer came, took the road name, listened, nodded a lot, and said he'd go check the area. He had that expression people get when they believe something happened, but they don't know what to call it yet. We never got anything useful back. That's the part nobody likes when they hear this, but it's the truth. No clean reveal, no satisfying answer, just a follow-up call that basically said they checked and didn't find anyone. The next day, my friend took the Accord to a mechanic because it was still running rough, and the guy said there was fresh mud packed up under the passenger side and some scuffing near the frame, like something or someone had been under there recently, but nothing clear, nothing that turned into a report or proof or a story with an ending.
So that's all I have. A storm, a dead car, a voice under the door asking, "You got a jack in there?" Like that was a normal thing to hear on a flooded county road in the dark. I still don't know if he wanted help, wanted in the car, or was just waiting for one of us to step outside. I only know we didn't, and I still think about how close that probably was.
Out of everything we heard tonight, which story actually unsettled you the most? The first one really got under my skin, but I want to know which one did it for you. Vote for the scariest story in the comments below.